Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Element and Architecture podcast. And today we are going to be going to Suzhou, where we are met with perhaps not with scale, not with spectacle, but with immense elegance. Behold the Suzhou Museum. The story of this piece of architecture, the Suzhou Museum, all started in 2001. The mayor of modern Suzhou confronted Pritzker Prize award-winning architect Zhou Mingpei with a challenge to design a museum at a critical location in the city of Suzhou. In the historic district, at the intersection of two canals adjacent to historic Palace Zhou Wangfu, a traditional mansion with courtyards and gardens. The context of the challenge, along with Suzhou's urban context itself, presented immense boundaries and challenge to I M Pei. One specific challenge presented was the need to design a piece of architecture that truly resonates with the urban sophistication of Suzhou, that is characterized by the white-gray color palette. The enclosed garden architectural structure makes the city seem almost like its own natural environment. The need to design a museum that is able to showcase the 30,000 collections of traditional Chinese artifacts and pieces of artwork within a limited amount of space serves as an immense boundary confining the scale of the project. However, despite these obstacles, I M Pei's ingenuity as an experienced architect truly made the final product stand out. The Suzhou Museum, also known as the New Suzhou Museum, designed by I M Pei, opened all the way back in 2006. The masterpiece of an architecture harmoniously fuses I M Pei's contemporary modernist sensibilities with traditional Suzhou vernacular architectural styles. In this podcast today, we are going to be exploring the Suzhou Museum, everything from its unique geometry to its intricate planning through the lens of the elements within this architectural piece. To start off by discussing the unique geometry of the building, a discussion on I M Pei's personal story and experience as an architect is inseparable from the influences the Suzhou Museum takes on. As one of the most influential architects in this century, we can call him that, Pei is credited with the art movement of Cubism, or perhaps even international style, which is characterized by rectilinear structure and plane surfaces that is seen in many of the buildings that belongs to this style of architecture. We can say that both architectural styles influenced his tendencies as an architect. And so within the vast variety of works by Pei, we can see the clear influence of Cubism in the international style. Strict and streamlined geometry and the extremely simplified lines and structure of the building, almost as if the buildings themselves are treated as an aggregation of simple solids or simple prisms. Similarly with the Suzhou Museum, which is one of his later works, we can see this museum adopts the geometry with the simple streamlined geometry that characterizes many of Pei's works. Specifically, the use of rectangles, pyramids, and simple prismed solids as the overall forms constituting the architecture owes itself to Pei's strict geometric architectural style that he is known for, influenced by his sort of dedication to Cubism and the international style. On the other hand, Pei is also eager to adopt the contextual qualities this architecture takes part in. The design of this museum draws influence from traditional Suzhou style vernaculars and garden architecture, known for its unique black and white coloration and with the use of whitewashed plaster walls and dark gray tile roof, which defines the color palette of this Suzhou museum. The fusion between the streamlined geometry and the local architectural palette presents a hybrid between Pei's modernist sensibilities and the traditional Chinese vernacular architectural style. Suzhou vernacular, we can call it the Suzhou vernacular under the modern context, sort of. And so such fusion is also reflected in qualities of symmetry, geometry, and emphasis on lining, defining the museum architecture that is emphasized in both modernist and traditional Chinese architectural styles. An example of this would be when we look at each piece that makes up the museum architecture. Each individual component is perfectly symmetrical, represents an aggregation of prisms, and is accented by a variation of lining. That is the bolded dark lines that defines the outlines of the geometry. Or we can view as the crossing bolded dark lines that defines the outlines or the contours, the geometry of the overall structure of the building, which is much emphasized in Chinese calligraphy as well. These geometric qualities of the buildings serve to reflect a fusion between Pei's modernist influences and the traditional Suzhou architecture. We're looking specifically at the central hall of the museum. We can see that there's a clear series of geometric folds that starts with an octagonal shape and gradually rise to the peak of the roof through a series of transitions using simple geometric shapes such as triangles, diamonds, and rectangles. The simple geometry here is not only characteristic of modernist influences from Cubism and the international style, but it also resonates with traditional Chinese architecture, which is also commonly characterized by the use of folded roofs, as we can see in a lot of traditional Chinese architecture, use of the folded roofs. The series of folds not only represents a fusion between influences, but also allows natural light to enter the building through the transitions between layers of the building that gradually forms a loft, which is lighting, which is another element that Pei emphasized in his approach to architecture. That is lighting. That is the use of natural lighting, to make it more clear. Overall, the modernist touch to the traditional Suzhou style architecture really gave this architecture a sense of clean elegance that is unseen in any other architecture I've seen before, honestly. Zooming out to the design of the entire site, the overall plan demonstrates a rectangular design, a mainly rectangular design that revolves around a central water court, which includes a gazebo at its center. Such layout is organized around a central axis of symmetry that provides this museum compound with a sort of sense of order and organization. The one particular thing interesting about the layout and sort of the architecture in general is that this piece of architecture does not really strike as eye-catching in its given environment. If we look at it from aspects of its dimensions, its architectural style, and its color palette, etc., it's really not so different from its surrounding architecture at first glance. However, it's really unlike some of the other pieces of architecture that Pei designed, which are pretty pronounced around the environment. In many aspects, the building matches its environment with the white and dark gray color palette, and its planning that conforms with the Suzhou vernaculars, consisting of courtyard and gardens, and its dimensions, of course, that does not make it stand out from the surrounding site. This shows that Pei is especially considerate in designing the Suzhou Museum as to ensure that the museum blends in with the historical surroundings harmoniously. And while Pei made sure to allow the building to blend, the modernist touch to the building made it at the same time an eye-catcher from the crowd that it fits in with. And one final aspect about this museum that I would like to that I think is worth talking about are the gardens and water court themselves. The gardens and the courtyards are seamlessly integrated within each architectural component of the museum, allowing for sort of a mediation between the buildings and its surrounding greenery. At the same time, the internal courtyards, known as the cloisters, gardens, create an intimate atmosphere. The central court itself resembles a rendition of traditional Chinese gardens, the central water court. It consists of interconnected bridges with a gazebo in the center. Meanwhile, the central water court consists of garden rocks that's meant to form complex shadows and silhouettes against the garden walls that alludes to the traditional Chinese ink shanshui painting. These smaller garden elements, in aggregate, as you see, highlight the drastic traditional Chinese, especially Suzhou architectural style Pei adopts in creating this museum. In this podcast episode, we have explored the architectural marvels and incredible influences coming from Pei as an architect that makes this museum a unique blend of modernism and traditional Suzhou vernacular. We saw that some parts of its geometry is directly derived from Pei's artistic influences and tendency, while other aspects, such as the contextual blending of this piece of architecture, represents Pei's downright consideration and respect and dedication to the local historical surrounding. Its vast variety of architectural elements, from its innovative use of space, geometry, lighting, to the harmonious integration with its historical surroundings, the Suzhou Museum stands as a testament not only to Pei's genius and his ability to bridge between the past and the present, but also it's a work of elegance, as I have previously mentioned, that shines a light upon the rich Chinese history held within the very museum. And that is it for this episode of the discussion of the Suzhou Museum. I think for the next episode, we are definitely going to be going out of China to explore some of Pei's works that's located outside of China. And I definitely do think Pei is an architect really worth exploring, because its architecture is just so interesting and unique, as we will see in the upcoming episodes. And that is it for this episode, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.